Welcome to NSG 311, Study Session 4, Child Abuse and Neglect, Implication to Community Health Nursing Practice. Introduction. All families lose their balance from time to time, often because of illness or disability, addiction, violence, alcoholism, chain smoking, etc. There are families that even experience all at a time. Vulnerable families are those whose physically and emotional resources are so insufficient that critical tasks and family functions are threatened. In this study, you will learn about child abuse and child neglect and the roles a nurse can play in addressing the situation. Learning outcomes for study session 4. At the end of this session, you should be able to 1. Explain the concepts and types of abuse in the family. 2. Explain child abuse and types of child abuse. 3. Identify and describe the various levels of nursing intervention for children undergoing neglect and/or abuse. Child abuse and neglect. Child abuse is more than bruises or broken bones. While physical abuse is shocking due to the scars it leaves, not all child abuse is as obvious. Ignoring children's needs, putting them in unsupervised, dangerous situations, or making a child feel worthless or stupid are also child abuse. Regardless of the type of child abuse, the result is serious emotional harm. Sometimes, the crisis in the family can be so overwhelming even for a healthy family. Types of abuses in the family. Different types of abuses take place in the home. 1. Domestic violence, ranges of violence within the family. 2. Spousal or partner abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse perpetrated by either husband or wife against the marriage partner, also called marital rape. 3. Wife abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse perpetrated by husband against his wife. 4. Women battering, women in relationships in which battering is ongoing. 5. Elder abuse, physical abuse, neglect, intimidation, cruel punishment, financial abuse, abandonment, isolation, or other treatment of an elder, resulting in physical harm or mental suffering. Child abuse. Child abuse is the physical, sexual, or emotional maltreatment or neglect of a child or children. According to the Journal of Child Abuse and Neglect, child abuse is any recent act or failure to act on the part of a parent or caretaker which results in death, serious physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse or exploitation, an act or failure to act which presents an imminent risk of serious harm. Child abuse is defined as a physical or mental injury, sexual abuse or exploitation, negligent treatment, or maltreatment of a child by somebody who is responsible for the child's health and welfare. Each year, 160,000 children are severely abused. 3 million are abused and/or neglected, and 1,000 to 2,000 die as a result of the assault by their caretaker. Under 5s are the mostly abused, followed by under 1. Children are often referred to as innocent. They are vulnerable by the virtue of their age, size, sex, basic dependence on adults, and lack of power. Child abuse is interpreted differently from one culture to another by culture, socio-economic groups, and neighborhoods. This is largely because children are regarded too as their parents' properties, and so the community has been so reluctant to interfere in matters concerning child rearing. Types of child abuse. There are basically 4 types of child abuse. 1. Physical abuse. 2. Emotional abuse. 3. Sexual abuse. 4. Neglect. 1. Physical abuse. The obvious signs are seen like bruises. Normal childhood bruising is common over bony prominences, whereas bruising of soft tissues, lower back, buttocks, abdomen, under the armpit or shoulders where the baby was grabbed, multiple sites at different stages of healing is suggestive of abuse. Other signs include burns, cigarette burns, hot iron, curling comb, immersion of arms and legs in hot water, fractures, abdominal injuries, though may not have external signs. 2. Sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse, CSA, is a form of child abuse in which an adult or older adolescent abuses a child for sexual stimulation. Sexual abuse refers to the participation of a child in a sexual act aimed towards the physical gratification or the financial profit of the person committing the act. This may or may not involve force or coercion depending on the age of the child. 3. Emotional abuse. This involves verbal or behavioral actions which diminishes the self-worth or self-esteem of the child. It includes name-calling, put-downs, isolating, stigmatizing, humiliating or ignoring the child. Community health nurses should help to explore which is applicable and assist parents to make a conscious effort to resolve this. 4. Neglect. Child neglect is a very common type of child abuse. It is a pattern of failing to provide for a child's basic needs, whether it be adequate food, clothing, hygiene, or supervision. Child neglect is not always easy to spot. Myths and facts about child abuse and neglect. Myth 1. It's only abuse if it's violent. Fact. Physical abuse is just one type of child abuse. Neglect and emotional abuse can be just as damaging, and since they are more subtle, others are less likely to intervene. Myth 2. Only bad people abuse their children. Fact. While it's easy to say that only bad people abuse their children, it's not always so black and white. Not all abusers are intentionally harming their children. Many have been victims of abuse themselves and don't know any other way to parent. Others may be struggling with mental health issues or a substance abuse problem. Myth 3. Child abuse doesn't happen in good families. Fact. Child abuse doesn't only happen in poor families or bad neighborhoods. It crosses all racial, economic, and cultural lines. Sometimes, families who seem to have it all from the outside are hiding a different story behind closed doors. Myth 4. Most child abusers are strangers. Fact. While abuse by strangers does happen, most abusers are family members or others close to the family. Myth 5. Abused children always grow up to be abusers. Fact. It is true that abused children are more likely to repeat the cycle as adults, unconsciously repeating what they experienced as children. On the other hand, many adult survivors of child abuse have a strong motivation to protect their children against what they went through and become excellent parents. Nursing assessment of child abuse. The community health nurse who works with the family or individuals is in a position to recognize abuses and to advocate for the child. Advocacy is difficult if the nurse cannot maintain the objectivity necessary for obtaining a history. This is because history taking is an important aspect of advocacy. Also, differentiating between child abuse and child discipline may pose a challenge too. Any suspicious finding warrants a thorough history and a complete physical assessment to provide for child safety. 4.2.4 Risk factors that predispose children to abuse and neglect. 1. Unplanned or unwanted pregnancy. 2. Teenage pregnancy. 3. Single parenthood. 4. Closely spaced children. 5. Substance abuse. 6. Social isolation. 7. Poor support system. 8. Limited knowledge of child development. 9. Previous report to Child Protective Services. 10. Previous history of child abuse. 11. Partner violence. 12. Children with disability or developmental challenges. Effect of child abuse and neglect. All types of child abuse and neglect leave lasting scars. Some of these scars might be physical, but emotional scarring has long-lasting effects throughout life, damaging a child's sense of self, ability to have healthy relationships, and ability to function at home, at work, and at school. Some effects include 1. Emotional. Child abuse can cause a range of emotional effects. Children who are constantly ignored, shamed, terrorized, or humiliated suffer at least as much, if not more, than if they are physically assaulted. Abused children can grow up experiencing insecurities, low self-esteem, and lack of development. Many abused children experience ongoing trust issues, withdrawal, trouble in school, and forming relationships, reactive attachment disorder, RAD. 2. Physical. The immediate physical effects of abuse or neglect can be relatively minor, bruises or cuts, or severe broken bones, hemorrhage, or even death. In some cases, the physical effects are temporary. However, the pain and suffering they cause a child should not be discounted. The long-term impact of child abuse and neglect on physical health and development can be shaken baby syndrome, impaired brain development, poor physical health, etc. 3. Psychological. Children who have a history of neglect or physical abuse are at risk of developing psychiatric problems or a disorganized attachment style. Disorganized attachment is associated with a number of developmental problems, including dissociative symptoms, as well as anxiety, depression, and acting out symptoms. 4.3. Child neglect. This is when the family fails to provide for child's basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, supervision, education, emotional affection and stimulation, and health care. It is the most frequently reported form of child maltreatment. A thorough history taking and assessment is critical as well. Depending on the particular manifestation of neglect, the community health nurse should assess what type of education and support the family might need to improve the care of the child. If the family does not have enough resources to provide for basic needs, The nurse can offer referral to social service agencies that can assist. It is also necessary to explore the parents' childhood upbringing, because if they too were neglected then, it may just be natural to parent in the way they know. End of study session 4. Thanks for listening.